Chapter 13, Times and Seasons. About a week after Maruja's death, the pitiful motherless baby was brought to Doreen for treatment. He was sick and thin as a skeleton and appeared to have syphilis. Doreen did what she could for him, but he was obviously not being loved and died a few days later. His two fathers had fed him only water. The effect on me of these deaths, a woman I had hardly seen before and a tiny scrap of an infant, would not have been so profound, I suppose, if we had had many distractions in our life in San Miguel, but life was a long, slow wait, with world enough and time for reflection, and I know now that that was what I needed. Missionary work of all vocations required a sinewy faith. Maruja's death produced a tremor in the foundations. If God had actually wanted us here at all, if we knew how to pray, if in fact he was concerned with the salvation of the Quiñones family, would he not have spared the mother and child? If Maruja or her men had had any glimmer of faith, if we had had any reason to believe that she had died in the peace of God, it would have made all the difference. As it was, the Quiñones household remained beyond our reach. We had not helped at all. An excerpt from a letter I wrote to Jim will show what it was like. I find that I very soon get stale and fed up with life here. Contrary to your life, too busy and too full, mine is slow and eventless often, and the days drag by. It is spiritually enervating in a peculiar way. The quotation from Hudson Taylor on my China Inland Mission calendar is just the opposite of what I need now. The intense activity of our times may lead to zeal in service, to neglect in personal communion. But such neglect will not only lessen the value of the service, but tend to incapacitate us for the higher service. I find that because nothing actually presses me to activity, I dawdle in quiet time, let my mind wander in prayer and daydream when trying to study. Sometimes, I confess, after a long time on my knees and very little praying done for the thousand trivialities that beckon my attention, I call it quits, saying to myself, this isn't prayer, might as well be up and doing something, even if it's only baking a cake or sharpening a pencil. I feel that I have lost much since college days. It cannot be excused because I'm getting old or because the devil tempts me more now. The Lord has promised to lead us in triumph. My letters to Jim were often written over a period of days, for there was no mailbox to put them in. They sat on my desk until it happened that someone was going out to Quito or to Santo Domingo, where E.T. would take them to Quito for us. Even in Quito, there were no mailboxes at that time that could be trusted. Letters had to be taken directly to the post office and the stamps canceled if you wanted to be sure they would reach their destination. Otherwise, stamps were often stolen from the envelopes and letters were discarded. Still, it was a precarious business, for several times the bags in which our mail was being carried were stolen from the backs of trucks. Doreen had lost a suitcase that had been thrown on top of a banana cargo and, according to the conductor, had fallen off somewhere along the way. The suitcase had in it checks she had received from friends in England, her address book, clothes, a picture of her Ecuadorian suitor, and the mail that Dorothy, Barbara, and I had entrusted to her. An Ecuadorian who was bringing mail for us from Quito had his luggage stolen. Only one who has been isolated as we were from all that tied us to our past can imagine what such a loss meant. When someone was going to town, we made out our lists with great care and anticipation. To be able to send letters was a pleasure, and the idea of receiving them was greater. With what eager straining and anticipation we waited for the return of the messenger. Sometimes he brought what we had asked for, sometimes he did not, for one reason or another. Sometimes he forgot, sometimes he couldn't get things, sometimes he was robbed. The Apostle Paul knew such eventualities and could write, "All things are for your sakes." It was a very bitter pill to swallow. All things? One day when Doreen arrived home from Quito, Barbara asked her if she had brought fresh thyme. I took it that she meant fresh thyme, T-H-Y-M-E, and wondered how in her simple cooking she planned to use it. I learned that she wanted to set her watch. It was only when someone came in from outside that we had fresh time, T-I-M-E. There were things like avalanches, too. At times, the road to Quito was cut off and nothing came or went. Once, for a period of weeks, the railroad connecting Quito to the Pacific coast was interrupted by a landslide. This meant that no fuel was transported from the coast, which meant that no banana trucks ran to Santo Domingo, which meant that we got no mail and very few supplies. We had no gasoline for our pressure stoves or our lanterns. We cooked entirely on a fogon and used candles for light. We could not iron our clothes. We felt exiled and became more discouraged. A man came on horseback one day to encourage us. He said that it would only be 15 more days before things would be coming through and that they were building a bridge across the chasm created by the avalanche. When gasoline did at last begin to arrive, we had to pay 84 cents a gallon for it. I missed the 4 distinct seasons of the year, which I had always known. They are among God's greatest gifts, each giving its own special delights and a respite from the others that enables us to appreciate them more fully. Each brings an opportunity for a fresh beginning, new activities. I loved closed curtains and an open fire, but we had no curtains, no windows to close, and only the smoking fogon. I loved open windows, warm air blowing in, but we often had cold air and wetness. I loved spring cleaning and putting away winter clothes, and I loved getting winter clothes out again. We had the same limp dresses and skirts, week in and week out. I loved the quiet and isolation that bad weather brings, but we had more of this than we wanted. San Miguel was in the rainforest and had 2 seasons, a rainy one and a rainier one, though of course they were called dry and rainy. The dry season meant light rain, a lot of mist, and cloudy weather. The rainy season was one of extremes, more sunlight and more rain than in the dry rain, such as I had never imagined in the temperate climates of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. A million lances of water pouring straight down from the sky, turning the clearing into a dancing lake, setting a vast orchestra of frogs, where had they been till then, to tuning. The next day there would be bright sunshine. It was all or nothing at all sort of weather, more interesting than endless days of gloom and half-hearted dampness. To the jungle people, of course, there were other recognizable seasons according to the flowering of fruit or fruit-bearing of certain trees, or the harvest of corn and cotton. They paid no attention to clocks or calendars as we did, but we wanted to sharpen their recognition of certain occasions. Our first serious attempt to do this was a Christmas program, planned for the school children and their parents, that included the sort of songs and recitations we were used to, and that was to end with the giving of gifts. Dorothy went to Quito to buy the gifts and somehow managed to forget to bring them back with her. We were in despair. How could we make a Christmas for the children without them? This was to be our big occasion. The children did not know there were to be gifts and would not miss them, but to us it was unthinkable. There was nothing for it but that one of us go up and get the toys that Dorothy had packed carefully and left in our bodega, or storeroom. I was the one to go. The trips to Quito were always major undertakings. The horseback ride to Santo Domingo that might take 2 hours or 4, depending on the state of the mud. The night spent in town on the cot at E.T.'s house, or, if I could arrange it, in somebody's bodega, with an ear cocked for the sound of the trucks starting up early in the morning. On this occasion I had been told that they would leave at 5, but at 4:30 I heard them actually pulling out of the plaza. I sprang from the cot, dressed, and rushed out to find the plaza dark and quiet, the last truck apparently having left. No, there was one, with a single seat left, and they let me on. The long grinding journey up through the mountain pass, from heat to wind and cold and drizzle. The people jammed together on the narrow board seats with narrow board backs, chickens and pineapples hanging over the windows. Children held out the windows from time to time, since there were no rest stops at all. Long waits in little towns where someone's sister-in-law had been promised a ride, but she is not quite finished with her breakfast when the truck arrives. Long waits on the road, far from any dwelling, for reasons that are neither explained nor inquired about. A long wait at the chain, long waits at tiny coffee houses, and long, slow pulls in first or second gear, up and up into the mist until at last, through a break in the clouds, you see the green paradise of Quito's valleys spread below, and you begin the groaning, jerking descent to the inter-Andean plain. This time I thought of Jim. Was there the slightest chance that he would be in Quito for Christmas? At last the city, the cobblestones, the narrow streets with radios screeching and children scurrying in front of the truck, finally the crowded, teeming station, where the bananas are unloaded and the passengers climb down from their perches and collect their baskets and burlap sacks and chickens and crates of naranjillas, a small orange fruit, the size of a golf ball, which has pulp like a green tomato and tastes like a strawberry. For a traveling missionary like me, there would be another missionary's house, a hot bath, the bliss of civilized clothes and food, rugs on the floor, polished furniture, people who spoke English, then taxis, buses, exchanging money, shopping. Jim was not there. There wasn't even a letter. If he had known I would be there, would he have come? I did not know. Another banana truck back again to the jungle, another night in a bodega, another horseback ride, a bath in the river, and I would be home. But this time I reached home too late for the Christmas program. The truck broke down, and there was a 24-hour delay. Mañana, señorita, what is a day? Mañana the truck will go. The whole trip for nothing? Would the others have the program without the gifts? They did. I arrived home on Christmas Eve, a few hours after the program had been held. On Christmas morning I was awakened by little Vicente coming into my room, waving a British flag and singing God Save the Queen in English. Tropical foliage outside my window, no snow, no evergreens. I was in Ecuador, not the States. There was no tree to be lighted. There were no presents to be opened by us. But we did get around to singing a few carols with our little pump organ, and we had a feast for dinner, chicken with all the fixings, which in this case were manioc roots, carrots, squash, mashed green plantains, coleslaw, coffee, and an English suet pudding with hard sauce, the gift of another missionary.